Hi, I'm Jamie Smart, and welcome to another case study for Clarity Pro. And I'm joined today by one of our early Clarity Pro members, Matt Fox. Now, Matt is a coach and a podcaster, and he's got a particular specialty, which is working with entrepreneurs, and particularly with entrepreneur dads. And he's a dad himself, and so he's really helping people uh, to bring just more of themselves into their work and into their family life and all of that. And it's a real pleasure to have you with us. Great to have you with us, Matt.
Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for asking me. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, and where I like to start these is by asking if you could tell us what first sparked your interest in the principles and a little bit about the work you do as well.
Yeah, sure. So I probably have to give a brief kind of career snapshot because that'll
Sure.
give some context for this. But in my 30s, I co-started a business that ended up being a successful, quite large-scale e-learning business in the UK.
Cool.
And the business was sold in 2012. And in the last couple of years of the business, I'd already been thinking about my future and that I probably didn't want to be an e-learning person for the rest of my life. And I'd started training as a psychotherapist and had seen my next career step as psychotherapy. So when I left my business in 2014, I started a psychotherapy practice and quickly built up a successful practice working one-to-one with people. But a couple of years down the line, well, two or 3 years down the line, I had something happen in my personal life that really kind of shook the foundations in my life, and I started realizing that I probably wasn't going to be able to, or didn't want to be a therapist with a full caseload for the rest of my life. It just felt too heavy, and I was working with some pretty heavy things in that, and I absolutely love the work of psychotherapy. So I started fishing around for some coaching courses and. I had in mind that coaching would be, more future oriented, and I'd done a lot of coaching in my business and really enjoyed it. So I looked for a course, and I happened on this course, and I didn't know it was anything about the principles, but it was a principles-based coaching course. And I started hearing things that actually were really challenging as a therapist,
Right.
and I felt very resistant to what I was hearing at first, and that some of those messages just didn't chime with my training and what I thought I was true about how I saw life, and as I got more curious, and I stuck with it, even though I was feeling quite resistant, a bit angry at times, and I went off and read The Enlightened Gardener by Sydney
Mm.
Banks, and somewhere in there I read, I think it was in the book, that he said, if a therapist suggests you go back into the past, you should run a mile, get out of there because the past doesn't exist. And it wasn't the first time I'd heard that in my life, but it hit me that
Yeah.
as a truth. And I literally had this, oh my God, moment where the work I'd been doing with my clients innocently was really misguided. And it sent me into a crisis really about my work. And literally I showed up the next day with my clients and I was saying, I've just seen something that I don't think I can carry on working with you in the way that I have been because it doesn't make sense to me. I've been, exploring the past with you, and I was, reflecting back on my own experiences of being in therapy and how it was very hit and miss whether I felt better or not from a session. And quite often I'd walk out of my therapy sessions feeling worse than when I went in. And so I suddenly had this revolution in my work where I felt I couldn't show up as a therapist, exploring people's past anymore. And that really started my deeper exploration of the principles. And that in itself, that first insight I had was enormously liberating for me because I'd spent a lot of time thinking about my past in
Yeah.
therapy and outside of therapy.
And it's amazing, isn't it? Just how a single insight that shows up in a heartbeat can have a directional impact in our lives. And can you tell us a bit about how you're sharing the principles with people today? Like what that looks like, having gone on that journey?
Yeah, so it's been a work in progress, and I guess it's going to be a lifelong work actually in progress. But I had a bunch of therapy clients, and I said to them all, look, I'm going to be working in a different way from now on, and do you want to stick with me? I'm seeing some things that are really having a big impact in my life. Do you want to come on this journey with me? And I'm really glad they all said yes. So I've carried on working with that group of people, and with different results, but some have had some big shifts and insights themselves. And then really, as I started exploring the principles further, I started having a sense that I really wanted to connect with dads, and particularly entrepreneur dads, because having been an entrepreneur and got very close to burnout, and in a really bad way during my experience of building my own business, I felt I had some things to share and say about kind of building a business. But equally, having a young child, I was going through all sorts of things that parents do. Some of them I was dealing with, I have no before and after here, because I'd already kind of come into the principle. Well, I guess I saw the principles about a year or two into my child's life, and I was seeing things that were helpful. I was seeing things that were really helpful. So I had this call to want to share this understanding with other dads who might be struggling with balancing building their own business and showing up as a parent.
Well, and one of the things I really love about that, Matt, you've heard me say that my vision is of a world where children are born to parents who already know the truth about this, who already know that we have that innate clarity and well-being already there within us. They already know that their children aren't broken and don't need fixing. Like I just like you and me were born into a world where the adults already knew about the fact of germs, and we all grew up washing our hands and stuff. I'd love to see a world where all the parents know that. The cool thing that hadn't struck me when I first had that vision is it's already happening, and you're an example of it, and you're sharing that with other dads, and having children grow up in homes where they already know the truth of this. I love that. It really touches me. So what are some of what's that journey been like for you, and what are some of the results you're seeing since kind of making that shift? You made the shift. You told your existing clients, hey, I'm working in a different way. Do you want to come on the journey with me? And they said, yeah. What's that journey been like? So how long ago was that, by the way?
That will be coming up for 2 years now.
Okay, so relatively recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's that journey been like?
So you mean in my personal life or in my professional?
In the journey of sharing this understanding and your coaching practice and that sort of thing. But feel free to include interesting or dramatic personal details as well.
Yeah, that would take a long time. I would say the professional journey it was initially quite bumpy, because I felt very torn between the modality in which I trained and seeing these principles, and I felt my confidence wasn't very high, so I'd find myself kind of switching from one space to the other. But I think the biggest shifts that I've been experiencing in the last year and a half is to see where my experience is coming from, and I think you've really helped clarify this through Clarity Pro and the other training I've been doing with you, that there's only one source of where my experience is coming from, and knowing who I truly am. Those two facts have absolutely powered my practice in a different direction, because I don't have the confusion or doubt now in what I do. That's how I show up every day in my practice.
Man, so I just want to underline that, because I think for a lot of people watching, those two facts are one of the things I covered in the first video in the masterclass series. Those two facts are foundational in my 12-week coaching immersion and in my 7-month clarity certification training, and we kind of beat them senseless. But the reason we do so is for exactly the reason you said, is that having deeply realized and embodied and seen the power and impact and relevance of those two facts for yourself, it's had a foundational effect on your practice. Now, for someone who's listening and is like, how has seeing these two facts, how has that had that kind of impact in Matt's practice? What would you say?
Yeah, such a great question. And I don't know if I can completely articulate it, but it's taken so much off my mind. I guess,
Mm.
what first drew me to psychotherapy was that it was a wonderful intersection between um, intellectual challenge and emotional connection and presence. But actually, what I've recognized in the time I've been working with you and other coaches in this space is that I had a lot on my mind. I was just continually trying to diagnose, assess, bring the most appropriate intervention in, and I think I was pretty present as a therapist, but nothing like I am now. I mean, I can see
Mm.
that's so much different in how I show up in my work. That I'm much more quiet, I'm much more connected, and much more relaxed into just what needs to show up will show up for me in the work. And it's interesting comparing now. I've just finished work with a couple of clients who I've worked exclusively with this understanding and as a coach compared to people who've been with me longer as a therapist. And the speed of transformation and the depth of transformation is quite extraordinary
It's pretty
compared to,
incredible, isn't it? What
yeah.
what kind of results are you seeing in your clients' lives, and also what kind of shape is that taking in your practice? Like, are you working on packages or doing group work? What kind of things are you doing?
Yeah, so when I was a therapist, I worked on hourly and weekly work, and now I work exclusively with packages,
Mm.
kind of for 3 months, 6 months packages. And so I've just finished with. I don't work exclusively with dads, I should say, as well. I work with people from all walks of life. I work with, still work a lot with women, particularly those who've experienced narcissistic abuse growing up. So. But I've just finished with a young woman who was really struggling with her marriage, with her professional life. She was so caught up in her head. She didn't know whether she wanted to stay in the marriage. And we just finished yesterday. And she said to me, "I feel like I've been given the keys to life. I feel like I've been given the keys to life." And she said, "I know this is going to sound stupid, but I feel like I've been enlightened in this process."
That's
And
so cool.
it
How
was,
does it feel for you to be having that kind of impact with people? Like, I know that it comes from within them, but you got something to do with it. How does that feel?
I mean, she was in tears. I was in tears. It was so amazing. I felt so full, not in my ego, but just in a loving connection with her, and so blessed. I mean, I feel so blessed to be doing this work and to be helping people see the truth of who they are and how they can live a better life, because she's set now. She's
Yeah,
in her early 30s. I wish I'd been able to see that 20 years ago. I'm glad I've
yeah,
got it now. Very grateful for that.
me too.
But that she, I'm just so grateful that she's been able to see that, because her life will be so different now.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Matt. Well, at the risk of going into the past, I had another question, which was, if you could go back and kind of give a message to the you who had, I guess there was a point when you first, it was kind of cool what you were saying about, you were hearing stuff about these principles and it was kind of confronting to you and made you angry and that sort of stuff. So and I guess there was a point where you got touched by it. Like you said, you read that line from Sid about going into the past and you're like, oh, actually, there's something going on here. I assume that at that point, that was the you who wanted to bring this understanding into your work, but didn't yet know how. If you could give a message to that you of, 2 years ago, what message would it be?
Hmm. Slow down.
Mm.
Consume less. I think, like many people who first come into the principles, I just binged on the wealth of videos and
Drinking,
content and books.
drinking from the fire hose.
Yeah, geez, that was exhausting, actually. Um, yeah, and just trust that I'll see what what I'll see when I need to see it, and it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
I sweated so much, I think, in that transition from being a psychotherapist into a coach, working with the three principles, and was I doing it right, and worrying about harming my clients or just screwing up generally in my work. But it's interesting, my partner was saying to me yesterday, she said, "It's really interesting, I haven't heard you say for a couple of years you've had a bad therapy day, like you've been a bad therapist." And I used to agonize at times, like, God, did I take a wrong turning? And what's been the impact of what I've just done with that? I just don't go there anymore. It's really interesting. So slow down. It's all going to be okay. You'll see what you need to see when you need to see it. You're being taken care of.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Oh, I know what the other thing that occurred to me, because you were one of the first people to join Clarity Pro. You were one of the original members. What inspired you to do that? And that was, I guess, a year into your journey with the principles. How have you seen things change over the last year?
I've seen things change in so many ways. I feel like my own grounding in the understanding of the three principles is continually evolving. Clarity Pro seemed to me, how can I put it? There's a lot of amorphousness in the three principles world, right? And some of what I love about what you bring into that is that you bring a framework in that is utterly in service of and aligned with the three principles in my experience, and yet it gives some structure and clarity that perhaps I didn't have. So just being able to get a sense of how you can share the principles within the different categories that you've explored in there, I think was really reassuring. And actually, when I listen to you, within that structure, the core message is always the same. These two truths that we were talking about at the beginning, that's never different.
Yeah.
But I think to explore that within the framework, okay, well, what would that look like, in the field of addiction? Or what would that look like in terms of productivity? Or what would that look like in terms of relationships and all the other topics you covered? That I felt was enormously helpful at that time to get me started. And as I was sharing with you in the message when we exchanged a message yesterday, there have been times when I've just gone back into that content, and it's just been really helpful as a refresher that I'm okay, that I've got everything I need.
Yeah.
Within that framework.
That's the thing. I mean, I really see the heart of sharing this understanding is finding your own voice and doing it in your way. And so everything I'm doing is just to kind of try and point people in that direction of seeing it for themselves and doing it in the way that makes sense to you. So it's wonderful to see you doing that with your clients, doing that with your Heart of Dad podcast. Great to see, Matt. Anything else you want to add before we wrap it up?
Well, I've said this to you privately, but for me, the last couple of years have been absolutely transformational in my life. I feel like the understanding of the three principles has brought me back to life in a sense, or reconnected me with my essence and who I am. And I'm really grateful for you and the teaching that you do in support of that, as well as the other teachers I've worked with. But it's such a blessing to be in this space and to have this opportunity in my life and to share it with other people. So thank you for giving me a little bit of a space to talk about it today. I've really enjoyed that.
Matt, I feel the same way. I often say I feel like I've just been given this incredible gift, and I feel so lucky and fortunate and grateful and blessed. It's very, very cool. And I get to work with amazing people, and it's wonderful to see this understanding spreading and being shared, and also just seeing the impact it's having in people's lives. It's so wonderful to see. So thank you for being here with me, Matt.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me on, Jamie.
Great to